to today's Ocean Connector, an opportunity for the ocean community to come together, learn new things, share ideas, and make connections. My name is Melanie Nadeau, and I'm the CEO of the Center for Ocean Ventures and Entrepreneurship, COVE, and I'll be your host for today's Ocean Connector. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our Ocean Connector sponsors, Cox & Palmer and Killam Properties, as well as our founding partner, Irving Shipbuilding. I have also an exciting announcement to make about a project we have called the Stella Maris, which is a multi-sensor seabed platform. We have a great video to share. Please enjoy. COVE's mission is focused on advancing the commercialization of ocean tech in an effort to bring those technologies to the global market. The Stella Maris is a really good example of what we have to offer in terms of resources.
We've never really seen something this intricate. I could argue that we created one of the most sophisticated ocean-going platforms in recent years.
Welcome everyone to our Ocean Connector. Today we have a special guest named Jonathan White. Jonathan, we're very excited to have you on the COVE Ocean Connector. And before we get started in our conversation today, a few words about your background. And I should mention that you're joining us from Washington, D.C., correct?
Yes.
Great. So Jonathan is CEO and president of Ocean Leadership Consortium, based out of Washington, D.C. You've got an extensive background in oceanography and are a retired Rear Admiral in the U.S. Navy. You've led the Naval Training Meteorology and Oceanography facility in Florida, extensive career there, and have been a commander in Naval Meteorology and Oceanography Command at the Stennis Space Center. You've been involved in climate change for a significant amount of time, and Jonathan's led the Navy's task force on climate change. You've also been a Navy deputy to NOAA, the National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration. And amongst many things, you've been a speaker to numerous events and keynotes in the US and around the world, and also have participated in 60 Minutes. So we're very fortunate to have you on today and really excited about having the conversation with you. So welcome to this part of the world in Halifax on the East Coast, and let's get started. So perhaps you can start by sharing a little bit about the Consortium for Ocean Leadership and what you guys have done since you've been there.
Boy, well, that's about 3 hours worth of interview there. I will just start by saying we're a group or a consortium of academic, industry, other nonprofit organizations. We ourselves are very much a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization in DC, as you mentioned already. But we have about 90 members. Again, they're not individuals, they're organizations. A lot of them from academia, but other sectors, as I mentioned. And really, what our mission is to advance ocean research, innovation, education, and sound policy to really shape the future of ocean science. We do that through things like exploration and discovery, understanding, and even action in terms of decision making. And so but really that boils down to trying to understand what the scientific, all the issues and important areas and priorities are, and advance those in terms of whether it's U.S. policy, it's education, like I mentioned, and these type of things, and really getting this 90 plus group, this group of 90 plus organizations to sing in harmony to some degree around what they think ocean science is telling us and the need for ocean science and technological research as well. And so again, that's really in things we've done. We've advanced a lot of policies, whether it's legislation in Congress. We've looked, we've explored and applied science to a lot of issues, such as, issues of ocean sound and aquaculture, We really tried to enhance and grow partnerships across the oceanscape, again, from industry and academia to federal, state, local governments. We try to educate. Ocean STEM is a big part of our work. We run a National Ocean Sciences Bowl, a quiz bowl competition for high school kids. Regions all over the nation come together, and actually, the students get together and compete, and learn a lot about ocean science and technology as well in the process. So, and I think we've really been able to increase the awareness of ocean problems and ocean opportunities across our nation and even around the world to some degree. Many of our members of our consortium are senior leaders at academic institutions. They're on the boards of the UN Decade of Ocean Science, many global bodies. So really able to influence where we're going in terms of sustainable sort of work and development in the ocean.
So one of the quotes that I saw, I don't remember if it was in one of the pieces you wrote or perhaps on your website, but it was advancing ocean research and technology from the seafloor to the halls of Congress. So I'm going to move into a next discussion around the new U.S. administration.
Sure.
So already what we've seen that there have been executive orders to double offshore wind in the U.S. based on this administration. Also to conserve at least 30% of federal lands and oceans by 2030. Also, there's been, by this administration, some notice on climate change as a point of national security. So clearly things are moving in a slightly different direction than it's been for the last several years. So maybe you could share your thoughts on what that's going to mean, what you think this administration and these changes that this administration is bringing in the U.S. and how that's going to impact the ocean space in the next couple of years.
Sure. We're very excited about the new administration. Probably the things that I think excites me and a lot of us most is the understanding that scientific knowledge needs to be applied to all types of decision making, whether it's policy, whether it's to build or not build, whether we're going to explore for oil and gas, whether we're going to build offshore wind turbines, but let science drive us to what is needed. We're very excited also about taking climate change seriously and looking at certainly alternative means of energy to get away from our reliance on fossil fuels and therefore the whole issue of greenhouse gas creation. So we really are excited to see that. Now, what we do also need to understand, and we're going to be working with this administration, is it's not just about climate change. We all know there are many threats as well as opportunities involving the ocean. Threats that are not totally related to things like a climate change, the threat of things we're putting into the ocean, from plastics to toxins, nutrients, and chemicals. The threats of overfishing and not understanding the impact of things we do on fish populations and marine biodiversity. We really don't understand that well. There are many other, a lot of issues that sort of go in and amplify the signal of climate change, as it were, in the health of the ocean. The ocean also can help a lot in terms of how it mitigates the impacts of climate change. As a carbon sink, as they say, we can get rid of some more of the actual, more of some of the atmospheric CO2 through plants in the ocean and things like that, sustainable types of development. But we also we need a balanced approach. And even the past Congresses and even the last administration, it was a lot of bipartisan support to ocean matters, ensuring that scientific research was funded. Things such as ocean exploration and mapping, things again such as ocean observations and monitoring, and again ocean types of ocean debris, plastics, and the impacts of those those are taken seriously. So we need to ensure that there's a balanced approach. We also know that a lot of our economy, the US economy, the world economy, and we are certainly a maritime nation like Canada, we rely on the ocean for a lot of gains in the economy. So this has to be a balanced approach. So we look forward to opportunities around lowering the risk of climate change. And offshore wind is great, but there's a lot more to that story as well.
Yeah, so I mean, as you mentioned, the world, think about what's happening with COVID. So the world over, the economy is getting impacted. And one of the things that we've seen, which is probably shared across our border, is that the ocean industry has been quite resilient in the face of the pandemic. And that's largely because our ocean is massive and global and is shared. So it means that there's opportunities around the world. So as we look at the recovery post-pandemic and the economic recovery, do you have some thoughts on what could be some early wins on how we can leverage the blue economy to spur that economic recovery as a whole?
So I think there are a lot of things that we can do. And I think when we look at trying to, again, go in and spur the economy, if we're going to provide some funding around certain types of initiatives, such as a lot of development in coastal areas, more resilient types of development, environmental friendly types of development, offshore wind, you've talked about other types of ocean energy, could certainly be inspired and, provide a lot of opportunity. The growth of tourism. I think, and this gets into the thing of sanctuaries and setting aside 30% of the ocean for areas of conservation, but we can really grow tourism. I don't think we've quite scratched the surface of balancing experiential type of tourism between virtual and on-site. Think of doing virtual scuba dives before you go and actually dive somewhere, so you know what you might see and experience there. I mean, I just think there are great opportunities to think about what are the key pieces of the ocean economy. One thing that's proven to be very successful, as you mentioned, during this horrible era is still, the world of shipping. The shipping industry still continues to operate, with a lot of success. Opportunities to drive down the risk to the environment from shipping, less noise, less, less sources of air pollution, which lead to climate change, and just better regulated type of things, new autonomy on the ocean. But you look at now, I can go on Amazon in the midst of a global pandemic and click on something, and it can come from another nation halfway around the world in a month. I've got that piece of clothing, I'm wearing it. That's due to the shipping and the maritime industry. So we've just really got to focus that the maritime industry is a glue that, holds all the world's nations together, and look at how we can amplify that in a sustainable manner that's healthy for the ocean, but also healthy for the human economy as well.
Yeah, so there's definitely lots of space to explore there. And even when we think about how we decarbonize maritime transport, which touches on climate change, tourism, et cetera, et cetera. So lots of work that could be done there. So you mentioned that, we know that this is the decade of ocean science, the UN decade of ocean science. So if you think about the next 10 years, given that you've been in this space for, I won't say how long, working in the oceans, but so in 10 years, what do you hope will be accomplished as it relates to the oceans? So what do you hope when we look back and say, yeah, that's done? Any thoughts there?
So I have a lot of thoughts there. But I think one of the most important ones is that we need to really advance our understanding of the ocean and our ability to understand and predict change to a whole new level. Look at these things of artificial intelligence and machine learning, where you can look at data and changes in things and smart computers, as it were, can go in and look at patterns of behavior and patterns of change and come up with relationships to understand the deeper meaning and relationships around all this stuff, to go in and help us model and really go, so what's going to happen? How much is sea level really going to rise in this area? What's going to happen to storms and these type of things? But then also, more critically, in my opinion, is what is going to happen to the ecosystems. We have huge gaps in our understanding of marine biodiversity. I mentioned a little earlier. We really don't understand how much life is in the ocean in this region and that region, how it's changing from the microscopic to the large organisms of whales and tuna and sharks. And what are those interrelationships and how much harm are we doing? And then what might we be able to do to actually go in and influence positive change in the future? So that's one thing. I think we can really get a handle on predicting change in the ocean. Of course, the other one is I want to see regrowth of healthy ecosystems, healthy coastal environments. Again, getting rid of a lot of the toxins. Waste management is such, it's crying out for growth in industry, growth in, new types of automated systems and technology to ensure we're putting only clean water back into, our waters that all lead to the ocean. There's really only two types of water on the planet: water that's in the ocean and water that's on its way back to the ocean. So we need to make sure that's clean, get the trash out of that stream as well, get rid of the plastics issues, and then also understand what's the real impact of these plastics, from large pieces to the microplastics. So that's also part of it. But then, and then we look at environmental DNA. I can take an ocean water sample right now and analyze it and look at the free-floating DNA that came from organisms. And that gets into, again, this issue of understanding the marine biodiversity and really what was there an hour ago, a day ago. Now, we have a lot of research to do to say, can I understand what the population density was based on that? But at least we know what was there and what wasn't there, and we can measure that over time and understand change. So that's one thing I think is great. But then the big thing I think also is data sharing and access. To be able to go into my computer, draw a box around an area and get all the ocean data that's ever been measured or observed there. And again, give it over to a computer or smart people that model and explore that to really get a handle on understanding our ocean. So those are just a few things. I think autonomy, and again, virtual reality. I can use a virtual, I can go down, I can sit here at my desk, and if I've got the right types of connectivity access, I can have a live feed of a submerged vehicle on a coral reef somewhere and watch what they're doing in real time. Think of the future. In 10 years, we ought to be able to have school children doing that from their classroom in miniature vehicles that are controlled by an iPhone somewhere. You could do this. I think just that ability to experience the ocean for populations who don't even have a dream of ever seeing or setting foot in the ocean is hugely immense, so that we can really create that shared ownership of the ocean as a critical part of our planet.
That's great goals. And I really hope in 10 years we look back and we're able to check off some boxes. One of the things you mentioned too was around, you hope that at that point we have kids in school looking at what's happening underwater and being able to control an underwater robot. So COVE has been working for several years on workforce development, so working in school, working with teachers, working with underrepresented groups. So your consortium has had a lot of experience there, and I wonder, if you can share the type of things that you've done on your end to try to identify new ocean careers for young people or people that are mid-career, or trying to get that interest in the oceans and having those smart people get attracted to that space.
Yes, and so it's hugely important that we really make progress here, because I don't think a lot of students, a lot of people understand the opportunities that the ocean and the blue economy does present, and especially going forward. Because you think of, a lot of people, especially once they get into ocean science, well, I can either do research the rest of my life, or maybe I can get a policy job in DC or in a state capital or something. but you start to think about really what does it take, and you guys know this at COVE well, what does it take to run a harbor, to run a business, whether it's tourism or shipping or seafood? You need people with a great understanding of ocean science and technology to be able to help grow and operate those businesses in the right way and in a way that is profitable. And, so I think that, it's basically, like I say, every type of STEM. So we're really big into ocean STEM and really trying to push that down to the lowest levels, lower than high school, middle school. But every math problem that you can think of has an ocean application, and people love to think about things like, how do I count fish instead of I'm counting rocks on a beach or something? I don't know, but or basically, but look at the engineering that's involved in ocean systems. Applying knowledge to ocean solutions and ocean problems. I think we don't do a good job enough of going in and basically pushing that down at all levels of learning. But then we've also got to look at the industries and even the policies, the governmental leaders. We don't have any ocean scientists in Congress right now. We have a lot of lawyers, a lot of financial experts. We need more ocean smart leaders in every sector of our political leadership, from local, state. We need them in every sector of business. Some of them don't even involve coastal or ocean areas, but a broader understanding. And then how does each and every job equate to it? Again, waste management or what it may be. So I just think we need to really go in. But another thing we don't do a good job of is, it's where you can, where a lot of folks in your organization very good at understanding what does the future workforce look like. Mm-hmm. Do I need people who are really smart in research or people who are really smart in data science? Data science is becoming hugely important. Do I need people who really understand, can actually go in and help me understand when I'm going to build something or I'm going to put ballast water in ships or whatever it may be? What are the scientific principles and a lot of new technologies that can help me make the right decisions? If I'm going to go in and automate things, how do I do that in an ocean environment where it's not risky, where it's safe and it lasts a long time, it's not that expensive, these type of things. So I think we in the ocean industry especially have to do a good job of thinking forward, like you said, to 2030, 40, and 50, and what is the job market going to look like? Because I'll tell you, a lot of the current jobs, that may not be around, the crewing of ships and port facilities less, but still jobs in terms of fishing and farming the ocean sustainably require knowledge. And there could be some great industry opportunities there. So I've touched on a lot of areas there, but yeah, we spend a lot of time trying to get people to think and trying to really influence the education end, but then partnerships linking education to industry and entrepreneurial efforts, they've got to be key. And the kind of partnerships that COVE has along those lines, exemplary. And so, I've taken a look at a lot of things you did, as had some conversations. If I could copy and paste that to a lot of regions around the US and all over the world, I would do that in a heartbeat.
Well, we're happy to partner with you on that because that's a big effort for sure. So I'm interested. So you've had a very decorated career in the U.S. Navy, and defense has been for a lot of the companies that are here at COVE developing high value advanced technologies. The defense is a big market for them. So I'm curious to know, in your years of working with defense, how you see them working with novelty and new technologies in the ocean space, and also how they view, from your experience, the oceans, and what's that value proposition from the defense sector's point of view?
Yeah, and I joined the Navy because I knew they had an oceanography arm. I wanted to be part of that, certainly, but I figured it was going to be a 4-year deal till I figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up. And it was 32 years later, and I hadn't figured that out. So they finally made me walk the plank and get a job, which I have now, luckily. But the importance of ocean understanding to navies, and, the U.S. Navy and the Royal Canadian Navy have a lot of overlap in this area, of course. But it's really gets down to what I called home field advantage at the home and away games. And otherwise, we need to know the entire ocean anywhere in the world. And it's, by the way, we learned this lesson in World War II. We actually learned it back in the Revolutionary War here as well. We knew the lakes and the coastal ocean areas better than the British, and it gave us a huge advantage sometimes when we were way outmanned, also in the War of 1812. But by knowing the ocean gives us a knowledge advantage. So that's key, and that creates, of course, that's our national security. Because, our submarines, know where to go, where to be, our ships, weapon systems. We can also monitor the undersea infrastructure, our coastline. So having that knowledge creates an advantage. The person who started this consortium as it is back in the mid-90s was a retired 4-star admiral, former chief of naval operations named James Watkins. And he said that oceanography was chiefly responsible for our victory in the Cold War, because our submarine forces and the undersea force especially, we knew the ocean better than basically the Soviet Union as an adversary. And so we knew we had a knowledge advantage, and that knowledge advantage was key. So that's one piece. The other thing is, we in the Navy, all sailors understand the importance of the ocean. We appreciate the ocean. Going back throughout history of centuries, going back to the Royal Navy and Darwin, exploring and understanding the ocean has been a principle of naval service for a long time. And, you won't find a Navy sailor who doesn't appreciate the beauty of ocean life, of a clean ocean, of an ocean that we know is really part of our larger world in sustaining life and health. So I think the navies have a huge role to play in advocating for the ocean understanding for many areas. And we need to be active also in getting rid of bad practices, the people who break laws around fisheries, around various types of fisheries, illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing, overfishing, dumping things in the ocean, types of actual fishing and aquaculture practices that are not healthy. Having Navy to help monitor and partner with Coast Guards internationally to stop a lot of these efforts. And by the way, let me go back and just make a point I missed earlier under this administration, because it gets into the role of navies a lot as leadership. This administration, we want to see much more leadership and engagement on the international front. And that's something I enjoyed a lot when I was in the Navy, was knowing that the U.S. Navy, along with especially a lot of our allies like Canada, especially in the Arctic with some of our partners, our voice was tremendous in advancing global interest around these things of ocean health, ocean security, national global security. So I'm really very excited about this administration taking its international role a little bit more seriously. But the uniformed services have to be part of that. Our uniformed services in this nation, and largely all nations, are trusted. Or maybe not all, but most nations are trusted. And so with that trust, in my opinion, comes responsibility. And so we've got to make sure that Navy leadership, Coast Guard leadership, maritime leadership from the national security and defense sector, and then this gets down into the industries as well, of basically showing leadership and showing that you're taking the problems seriously, the problems of climate change, the problems of toxic oceans, all these things that I talked about. Our navies need to have a leading voice to influence the overall behaviors. So these are all parts of the Navy and the ocean. Oh, by the way, in this nation, Navy research in the ocean has been much greater than any other agency over time by probably tenfold. The great scientific research, the U.S. Navy has built through research the best ocean model in the world. No other National Weather Service used that ocean model to understand if there's going to be a blizzard in New York or not. That comes from a Navy-developed ocean model. So Navy investments in research also, it certainly helps out a lot of national security, but it also helps out our national, everything, the economy, our prosperity, human health, all those issues. So our Navy has a huge role to play. That's why naval oceanography, that's why they have admirals that are naval, they're actually classified as oceanographers, although we're also meteorologists and navigators, by the way. So you get to do a little, like every other person at sea, you're a Jack or a Jill of all trades.
Yeah, you wear many hats.
Exactly.
You kind of segue into what I wanted to talk about, was from a US-Canada point of view, so if we were to look at our oceans and identify what are our key priorities, so you already spinned off great areas where we can work the health of the oceans, Arctic security, ocean science. So thinking about the blue economy go forward, Canada, US, any specific areas you would say are kind of the 1, 2 that would be great areas for us to start working on together?
First of all, I hope you guys aren't going to build a wall across the border, are you? I wouldn't blame you if you did, but no, that's just. Of course, the areas that come first, I think of, just from a geographic perspective, are the areas where we have shared borders. The Atlantic and Northern Pacific on the eastern side of the basin, and the Arctic. I think, of course, also don't let me leave out the Great Lakes, which are, again, really part of the ocean. It's just that water's not salty yet. Those areas provide great opportunities to get things right and to be an example. The economy piece that you mentioned, I've become more and more convinced that regional partnerships and regional types of organizations are what's going to be the key to advancing sustainable economies. And again, it's the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. So that needs to be led by the economic sector, as you know. So these partnerships that you can form regionally, where there are shared interests in terms of what are you fishing for, some cases, what are you mining for? Are you building offshore wind, shipping industries, whatever it may be, the shared interest upon the researchers, the academic institutions, the people who have jobs, the business owners in doing that. But we need to start sharing those interests better across those borders. Our scientists work really well together. You can go to a cooperative type of research effort in the Arctic or at sea, and it's, other than slight different in access and the type of beverages that are actually consumed or what they're called, it's basically just like, it's like going from one state to another or one, part of Canada to another. But, it's at the tactical level, we do a great job. Strategically thinking, though, I don't think we've really scratched the surface in terms of partnerships. And I think it starts at the top. Well, I'd love to see Prime Minister Trudeau and President Biden sit on a podium around ocean interests and say, here's a couple of key areas, key regions, key things we're going to do. And they can start with the Arctic. I'm, optimistic they're going to take the Arctic seriously again with this administration. But having an ocean platform that is shared at the highest levels, and then let's do some pilot projects. Whether it's research oriented, it's economy oriented. We've already seen, some areas where U.S. invested in types of work by firms in Canada, whether it's deep sea mining and things like that. But let's really look at how we could do some things. And then let's also look at observing and monitoring the ocean. What are your plans for your parts of the ocean border? What are ours? We cooperate internationally to some degree, but let's really try to do it in terms of partnerships. And really, how do we grow those things? Not just at the, at the areas in Ottawa and in DC, but let's look at states, region, townships. And what are some great working things that are working out there now? And then what great ideas do you have and your members and our members have to take that to the next step of real partnerships, and which we're really investing, in a partnership manner. And I think we can do much more. So there are a lot of areas there I could dive into deeply, of course, but I think there's just great opportunities for partnerships to a level that we haven't. I feel like we're still at the middle school soccer type of level in terms of our partnerships across the border right now. We need to get to the World Cup level. I'd love to see every other nation, every other group of nations in the world point to the US and Canada and say, that's how you build a sustainable ocean economy going forward in partnership. We can influence others. We've done it through Galway statements with Ireland and Europe to some degree, but let's also look southward, at the other parts of North America, Central America, and South America. And how do we grow the wonderful things that are being done in our two nations in partnership and through exemplifying the great work that we can do going forward.
Yeah, I really like that, the creating this ocean platform between our two countries. those key issues, and then have projects around it, and that's how things happen, right? So we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but great opportunity though, right? So where COVE is going to participate in that. I guess, so the other thing that I found out about you was that you've said that you're going to retire this year from the consortium. And so you talked about your 32-year career and then the 5 years with the consortium. And I don't know what's next. Maybe you can share that. But looking back at your career and at COVE, we work with so many different folks, and people are really curious about how people have evolved their careers and how, it's been in the ocean, it's been out of the ocean, and different perspectives that they had. So I'm interested in finding out what's been kind of in your past career, what's been the biggest highlights as it relates to oceans and your career just generally.
Boy, I get asked that question a lot, and then after about an hour, people tell me to shut up and let's talk about something else. When I think about highlights, and I'm going to start with something that was very recent. So we recently had a workshop that we put on around ocean exploration. And we had a specific panel that included representatives of the indigenous populations of islands in the Pacific Basin. And I mean, hearing from these men and women how they view the ocean, and it's a kinship. The ocean is part of their culture. It's, almost like it's a spiritual being, and they treat the ocean and the planet in ways that we just never think about, including that, and then other types of understanding of the environment and ocean from indigenous types of populations. That just really opened my eyes to the importance, because I was compelled, those type of things. I think that's really important. That was a recent sort of highlight. It opened my eyes in terms of, you've got to do a better job, not just listening, but including those populations in everything that we do in terms of advancing ocean policy, ocean research. You've got to do a better job of that. So anyway, that's part of the really growing much. I talked about the workforce, but I didn't talk a lot about the issue of diversity. I'll go back now and say, when I came into the Navy, women were not allowed to serve on combatants in the U.S. Navy in the early 1980s. They could only serve on supply ships, those, set outside of the combat zone. In my 32 years in the Navy, we had a 4-star African-American admiral who was the vice chief of naval operations, the second senior military officer in the Navy. She was in charge of the battle group that fought the pirates off the coast of Somalia and rescued that captain. She was involved in conflicts in the Persian Gulf. We saw our Navy evolve in terms of diversity in amazing ways. In the oceanography realm, of the officers that come into the world of naval oceanography, half are female now. We still have a lot of things to do, underrepresented groups of, from indigenous to African Americans and Latin Americans. We have a lot of work to do there, but we've made great progress. But some of the key things that I can also say is, really going in and using oceans and ocean space as a means to resolve some of the conflicts. What are the key elements? Again, I think about piracy. Russia, China, the US, other nations were really worked, in partnership to combat China off the coast of Somalia. What about ocean things? Can we turn the Arctic into, let's make sure we don't screw up the Arctic? Should be a partnership opportunity with Russia and the other Arctic nations and anyone else who wants to be part of it. But it's got to be making sure that we understand the Arctic and preserving the Arctic first. So, but I think some of the partnerships, applying ocean knowledge to be able to do that, to resolve conflict. Of course, using ocean knowledge to be successful, keeping ships out of harm's way. Don't go there. Arguing with Navy SEALs, if you can't get across that beach at sunrise, you're going to have to wait till later in the day or the middle of the night, because low tide and coral reefs in you with your elbows and knees ripped to shreds is not a recipe for success. Getting inside those types of decisions and learning that, if you can communicate ocean knowledge right, you can impact a decision at every level. From what, should I build this ship or that type of ship? Can airplanes fly or not? Should ships go here or not? Is the hurricane going to impact this area? Should they evacuate? All these things are decision making. So many of my highlights are based on having the right answer at the right time to make that right decision so that lives were saved or that our national security interests were maintained. And that's where ocean knowledge gets, so critical in many ways.
Well, that was a great lived experience, great highlights to have. And so with that, I'll wish you good luck in whatever you decide to do when you leave the consortium. But I'm sure your path ahead is going to be quite bright. So, Jonathan, thank you very much for being part of our Ocean Connector today. I really enjoyed your insights, and I'm sure everyone who's listening in and listening into COVE will as well. So thank you.
I thank you. It's a great opportunity. I don't know if this is on tape or not, but I'm not leaving the ocean. I'm just leaving the politics of the ocean.
I hear you. Yeah. So let's, I don't know, this ocean platform. How do we get there if you're leaving politics?
Well, there are a lot smarter, younger, and more energetic people behind me that I think that I hope I've had a little bit of positive influence, or maybe they've learned from my bad behavior, who can solve some of those problems. But I think shared ocean platforms by senior leaders is critical. And the U.S. and Canada could, I think, working with our new administration, working across the border. But those are the type of things I'm always welcome to talk to anybody about. Certainly those ideas at any time as well. So feel free to call on me for that, and certainly try to influence all the folks I know. And I bet my successor is going to have similar goals. I don't know who that's going to be. Seriously, I have no idea. Several people are interested, but just knowing the folks that are out there that are devoted to the ocean, those ambitions aren't going to go anywhere.
With the change of administration, there's a lot more hope around this. So it's probably not hard to find a successor. No one will fill your shoes. However, there's a lot of probably a lot of excited, interested folks out there that want to get something done.
Yes, there are. Hopefully they'll throw my old shoes out and come up with some new ones that are a little bit faster. Mine have slowed down over the last 5 years.
Right. I hope you really enjoyed today's Ocean Connector. If you'd like to connect with us, you can visit us at coveocean.com, on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter. Join us for our next Ocean Connector this upcoming May, where we'll do a deep dive with the project team from the Stella Maris. Thanks for connecting with us today.